Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. My name's Abby Dillon. I'm an actor, and I'm on the national board of SAG-AFTRA, and I'm also on the SAG Foundation board. Oh, you just took my picture. That's so good. That's so cool. This is going to be a fantastic panel tonight. I've been thinking about doing this for quite a while. I think this is really valuable information, and we have an amazing group of people to talk about it. The main idea is how to come back from a film festival with more than just a hangover, although I wouldn't write that down. But really, it's how to get some value out of the work that you do. So I'm going to have our amazing panelists introduce themselves. First is Sheldon Candis.
Oh my gosh, that's what this panel's about? Those were the darkest 2 years of my life. Wow, it's called post-traumatic Sundance syndrome. Wow, I didn't want to cry tonight. I didn't.
Well, just tell us about yourself first off, Sheldon.
Well, let's see. I'm a film nerd from Baltimore, Maryland, and by way of North Carolina. I came to this crazy town when I was 19 years old, turning 20, and I got into USC Film School, and so fight on. And we got here and we drove 42 consecutive hours across the continental U.S., me, my mom, and my dad, and it was eat, sleep, drive, eat, sleep, drive. And I was so thankful I was coming to Hollywood with, more than a suitcase and a dream, but I was actually going to SC to learn. But when we got to SC and my dad looked at the fee bill, he had no idea how expensive it was. So I would skip school to go work on sets. Not only would I skip school to work on sets, I'd also then skip school to run down La Brea to a McDonald's audition. I did that a lot, and to make a long story short, but that entire time I was writing. And I can't speak enough about how important it is to just write and to continue to write because you give yourself an opportunity. So just writing a story based off my life in Baltimore and a relationship I had with my uncles, and I was very passionate about it, and it was an 8-year process to make a film that was very close to me. And I was so thankful to make that film and then get into Sundance and premiere the film at Sundance. And then my foot was along the path. And then after that, I was really fortunate to find a book, a New York Times best-selling book, on a great part of American history that none of us know, and about this figure named Paul Jennings, who spent his entire life in the White House as a servant, as a slave, from age 10 to 66. And what's so amazing about the story is while he was a servant in the White House, he became what was called a subversive in the White House, which was he was an abolitionist while he was working in the White House holding the tray. So he became a master forgerer. He became someone who would find captains of ships who would literally take slaves away to their freedom. He's the mastermind behind America's grandest slave escape. And I see this book, and I can't believe I don't know this story. So I think all of us, Black, white, Asian, Latino in America, I think when we think about the history of the White House, we don't see the slaves that were there. And they definitely were. So, and I'm just thankful now that, I go from being a stressed out independent filmmaker to now actually being able to take my voice to ABC and make a 12-hour miniseries. So, I'm really thankful for that, And then really quickly, and I'll move on so it's not long-winded.
We'll come back to that's amazing story. And next is Megan Griffiths.
Hello.
Filmmaker, producer, writer.
Yes, I'm a filmmaker also. I was raised and sort of moved around a lot growing up, and ultimately went to film school and got my master's in Ohio, and then came back out to Seattle, which is not a place that I'd ever lived, but it is a place that I love. And I had lived in northern Idaho and gone over to Seattle for music in the early 90s and sort of fallen in love with that city and just always wanted to live there. So as soon as I was done with school, I just kind of gave it a shot, and I figured I'd give it a year and see how it went, if there was any industry up there. and there wasn't really at that time, but I just kept giving it another year, and now there's an industry 14 years later. But yeah, no, it's been building and growing, and I made a feature right when I got there, and then I stopped that for a while, and I started working on the crew side, and I was a cinematographer first, and then made a sort of unlikely leap over to first ADing, and I did that for 5 years, and the reason for that was because there was I went and did it on a friend's film who just needed a first AD, and then I came back to Seattle and realized nobody was doing that job for independent film, and I just figured I'd do it, and I'd probably get work, and there was a lot more competitive for cinematography than it was for the first AD job, which makes a lot of sense because it's a very thankless job. So I did that for 5 years. I pretty much AD'd every movie that shot in Seattle, and then learned on the job. I did not ever train under any other AD. I really had to figure it out, and by the crew telling me when I was doing something wrong and me listening, begrudgingly doing it right. And then all the meanwhile though, I was trying to get this film, The Off Hours, made, which I wrote, and it took 7 years, and ultimately I made it in 2010 for very little money, like 60 grand, and then it got into Sundance, which changed my life considerably, and I got another film directly after premiering called Eden, which then premiered at South by Southwest and got an audience award, which then led to my most recent film, Lucky Them, which then premiered at Toronto and has been released this year. And so it's been 3-4 years and 3 movies after having not done one for 8 years. It was a big, nice run of it, and now I'm trying to figure out what the next thing will be.
Awesome, thank you. And next we have Meg Morman, who's a casting director.
Hello. So I got my start, actually, I went to school for acting, and got a BFA in acting and directing, and part of my program was to do an internship in casting. So you had to move to LA or New York for 4 months, an intern for a casting director, and I packed up my Honda Civic with all of my belongings and drove out here from Ohio, and started interning. That internship turned into a job at 20th Century Fox at the feature casting department. So I cut my teeth doing a lot of studio films, big budgeted, and even Fox Searchlight films. I worked at the studio for a couple of years. When I left, I was a manager of casting there, but I felt like the studio world probably wasn't the best fit for me. I came from a very creative background, and working right at the studio is less creative than working independently. So I said goodbye to my studio friends and entered into the world of independent film and poverty. But lots of passion and being surrounded by people who are passionate about what they do, which is exciting. I started my own company in the end of 2004, a business partner, Sunny Bowling, and we both came from the studio world. We both primarily worked on studio films up until starting our company, but we started our company with the goal of working on independent films, and that is primarily what we do. All different genres, all different budgets, but independent films with people who are really passionate about what they're doing.
Fantastic. And next is Renee Ridinger, who is VP of Entertainment at MPRM.
Hi. I am the one that's here to prove that extracurricular activities in college are what leads to your career, not your degree. So that's the purpose always. No. I actually studied neuroscience at TCU and was in grad school for neuroscience at the University of Texas, and much like Seattle, fell in love with kind of the burgeoning Austin film community. It was a few years after Slacker had come out, and Rodriguez and Linklater and all those guys were really starting to kind of grow. And I got involved with Austin Film Society. I got involved with a PR company that did literary PR. And one of our projects, this will date how long ago it was a CBS miniseries starring Angelina Jolie. So pretty sure she's not doing CBS miniseries anymore. But I met a producer who's like, if this is what you really want to do, come to LA. I'll make some introductions for you. And I came out here knowing I could do PR, and I was doing a lot of writing and other things on the side, but PR is kind of what I fell into. And I spent a lot of time at 42 West, kind of as that company was starting. I was the third person in their LA office when we were working in a closet. I think they have 45 people in their LA office now. And then I now am in a company called MPRM, and we work with content creators, whether your content's going to film, television. We represent a lot of YouTube channels, web series creators. So it's really about helping creators find the right place and the right audience for their content. But my favorite part of what I do is festivals. There's nothing more thrilling than going into a film festival with a movie that no one has seen yet, except for a few of us and the people who have slaved for it for 8 years sometimes. Mm-hmm. We were there for Sheldon's Dark Days, we know.
Yes.
But it's that great thing of walking in and really being able to shape the perception and how the critics see it, what the best way is, where they're going to get the best response, and help with what becomes the eventual sale of the movie to a studio.
That's fantastic, and that's what we're getting at tonight. And finally, I want to introduce Peter Trinh, who's with ICM.
How's everyone tonight? Good. Wow, that was really loud. I'm an agent at ICM, aka I'm a suit, right? Things about me. I have probably the most expensive dry cleaning bill out of all the panelists. I've tried several ways to write it off or to expense it, and none have worked. I am originally British born. I was born in central London, and me mom and dad loved British weather so much we ended up leaving. From there, we flew to Seattle, Washington, where my mom slapped my dad in the face for not doing the research on the weather there. So then after that, we were like, beautiful city, by the way. But they wanted sun, so we went south. We ended up in California. I grew up in the Bay Area for a little bit. Then I went to the armpit of California, Central California. Then I went south even more. Then I ended up at university at UCLA. Sheldon, nobody's perfect. Won't hold it against you. Go Bruins.
Enjoy it, buddy.
And I ended up sticking around Los Angeles and had no interest in actually working in the business. Like I actually, acted, did a bunch of things when I was growing up, and I always appreciated entertainment. But I went into real estate. It was during the highlights of real estate before the crash, and I just didn't like it. I wasn't passionate about it. So I quit my job. I had a 22-year-old midlife crisis, and I became a male nanny, a manny, for about 6 months. And
that's what you still do. I'm just.
It's true.
That joke is
For a higher level of
Zing.
my per hour rate is a lot better now. So, I ended up, just a lot of the families I was a manny for were actually in entertainment, and I had long macro discussions with them. They gave me 2 books to read. They gave me one called The Mailroom, and they gave me one called The Agency. There were a lot of crazy things like throwing up things, and I'm like, you guys want me to do this, And I did a lot of research on it, and then lo and behold, they made a couple calls for me, and 10 interviews, and 11 years later, I'm still at ICM Partners focusing on motion picture packaging and sales. So.
Thanks, Peter. And in all, all kidding aside, I've seen Peter give a card to a 17-year-old Danish filmmaker who made an amazing music video. So he is passionate about what he sees. And I want to get right into it because the reason for this panel, and as you could tell by the way everybody spoke tonight, is that they're passionate about the work that they do. And so how do you convey this into the marketplace? How do you make yourself known at a festival, and what is that process? So I want to ask first, what was your best or worst experience at a festival?
Oh, wow. Well, I would have to say the first time I had ever went to the Sundance Film Festival was in the year 2003. And I had just gotten out of film school, and I was just I knew nothing about it. I mean, of course, I knew the filmmakers had gone through that, and I always wanted to.
And I'm sorry, Sheldon, just because people don't know, can you explain who was in your cast?
Oh, yeah. So in Love, let's see. There's this man who was in this movie called The Color Purple, a little small actor named Danny Glover. He's very intimidating, by the way. It was really hard, but it's common in his breakthrough performance as a leading man. There's this great little kid named Michael Rene Jr., who now is actually on Orange is the New Black. He plays the son in that. And Dennis Haysbert, who's a wonderful actor. Many people know him as the Allstate Man. And Michael Kenneth Williams from Chalky White from Boardwalk Empire. And Lynette McKee, for many people who know her work from, and yeah, so anyway, make long story short, to be very short about it, I always wanted to be at that festival, and I tried numerous times with short films and got rejected, and that was over 2003, and then it was in 2012 I was there with my first feature film premiering in Eccles to 1,300 people, and to me I don't know if it ever gets any more sweeter than that. Like it was just a special moment. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Megan?
Yeah,
Best or worst?
I was thinking about worst.
Best or worst? Best or worst?
I mean, I definitely have both ends of the spectrum that I could talk about, but I'm just thinking about sometimes it's not necessarily like the biggest festival where you have the greatest experience. Like I've definitely had really good moments at these festivals with the last 3 movies, but my first feature had its Northwest premiere at the Olympia Film Festival, and it was a really small film, and it wasn't like taking the festival world by storm. And it was when we went to that festival, they like brought all of our actors down from Seattle. They treated us all to dinner and drinks, and they like made a big deal out of us when we didn't feel like a big deal. And it was so gratifying because it was like the first screening that any of the actors got to go to, and it just made me feel like they were getting some sort of a reward for what they had done on the movie. And they had all, it was a no budget thing. They had all worked for free, and it was a total passion project. So it just was great. Like, and that festival I will always go back to because they treated us so well, and it was just like such a warm reception there. And I just went there actually and showed Lucky Them a month ago. But I just loved how special they made us feel when we were just this tiny movie.
That's great. So Meg, tell me about being a casting director and watching one of your projects, your best and worst experience at a festival, because I'm sure it's much different, a different perspective.
My worst experience, since everybody else went with
Yeah.
best, was the first time I went to Sundance, which was for the 2005. Yeah, Sundance 2005. We had just started our company, which meant I was broke, remember? And I had done 2 films on my own that summer, the summer of 2004, and they both were in the festival in 2005. So like my first time being there, my first films I'd done on my own, so I was like, well, I must go. So I bought a ticket, I packed a backpack, and I had no place to stay. And I figured I'd just show up, and I know a lot of people that are going to be there. I will find a place to stay. So I took the shuttle, and I get off the shuttle, and I've never been to Park City, and I'm like, okay, let me just look at a map, figure out where I'm going, and then I realized I left my cell phone on the shuttle. So luckily this was pre-BlackBerry even, so it wasn't quite the disaster that it might sound like if we left our cell phones today, but I did not have a way to, I finally, called them, and they came back with my phone. But I walked up and down Main Street, because that's basically what Sundance is, and it was freezing, and it was snowing, and I couldn't get a hold of anyone, and it was getting later and darker. And if any of you have been to Park City, about halfway up Main Street, there's a bench with a big bear next to it. Do we all know the bear I'm talking about? So I sat down next to that bear, deciding if I could sleep next to the bear, and make it to my premiere the next day, not looking like I slept next to the bear. So there were a few dark hours there. I mean, fortunately, somebody did eventually call me back with some space on a floor to sleep, so it all ended up fine. But there was like a good portion of the day that I was staving off panicking and freezing, etc. So,
Suffering for your art, for sure. Okay.
See, I was going to go 7.5 months pregnant in a blizzard at Sundance, but you win.
Oh.
You win.
no,
You win.
that's bad.
No, I have to say, like, for us, it's all about because we work hand in hand with like Peter's team to help sell the movie, and so much of what the buyers are looking for is how the press is responding to the movie out of that initial screening. So the best experience at a festival is when you're in that screening and suddenly there's like a standing ovation for your movie. We had a documentary called 20 Feet from Stardom a couple years ago, and that was one of those that like everyone was up on their feet and it was electric in that room. And you see that at those festivals because those festival audiences are so receptive to what they're seeing. The worst is when you are in the lobby of the Eccles trying to get reactions from press and they walk straight by you with this face. Angry, ready to go to their next screening. Sorry they've just seen what they've seen sometimes. It's hard, especially when you have something with Sundance where it's a really challenging kind of out there movie and you really want your critics to have time to think about the movie. And unfortunately, they're under such pressure to like file their review, get a tweet out right away that, I sadly don't think they're able to process movies like they used to be able to in the festival environment. So that's kind of the hardest thing for us.
Okay. Peter?
I guess I'll do the worst, I guess. I've had a lot of great experiences just because of the company I work at and the colleagues I get to work at, whether it be PR or filmmakers. I actually worked on Sheldon's film, so as well. I think the worst experience was we're always rushed as agents. Our schedules are pretty crazy at times. Like I showed my mom once, and she was like, "What? Like, how is this possible?" Right? And she thought I was joking, but I think this one time in Toronto, I was due to go cover a film, and I was like, "Oh, I'll go cover that. That's great. So our support staff's they're like, go here, go here, go here. So I'm like rushing, thinking I'm gonna miss the film. And I get into the room, and there's like 10 people in there. I'm like, oh, whew, I didn't miss it. I'm like sitting down. All of a sudden, lights go off. I'm watching it. It's supposed to be a foreign. I was covering a foreign language film just to see if we wanted to sign the specific filmmaker and give some input. And then a basketball starts like dribbling, right? And I'm like, huh? And then Will Ferrell pops up, and I'm like, Will Ferrell's in a foreign language film? Awesome, right? He's amazing, right? But then all of a sudden English started. The English language started like being in the film, and I'm like, okay, what am I? And I was so tired from like running around and everything, I covered semi-pro. Oh. And so then afterwards, they're like, what'd you think? I'm like, well, first off, I covered semi-pro because I got the wrong information, but it was a funny film. Somebody should be really into this Will Ferrell guy. He's awesome.
So, Renee, I've got a question for you. So if you're an actor, say, and around the country, we've got actors that are hearing us right now, and you have like a second or third lead in a good film, maybe not the top film of the festival, but a good one. How do you promote yourself? Do you need a publicist? Is it worth hiring a publicist? And if so, how do you do that?
There's a yes and a no to that, so I'll get into
Please.
both. If your movie already has distribution, I don't think it's a bad idea because you know your movie's coming out. Sometimes when it's coming out, and you know that there's going to be kind of a road ahead of you. If the movie is for sale, it can be challenging, and I usually advise people save their money, because if you have a good publicist on the film, they're taking care of everything. And what you have to remember at a festival is that the job at the festival is to sell the movie so the movie can come out, and that's really when you want to do most of your press. When we go into a festival, all we're looking for are press opportunities that are going to break right away during the festival. Buyers are going to see them, and that movie is going to sell. And sometimes it's just the filmmaker. Sometimes it's the more well-known leads who are going to be the ones who help sell it, and then there's other things to be done down the line. But I do think it's a case of talking to the publicist who's working on the film, letting him know maybe a story you have that might help sell you. To the press, if there's something really interesting about how you got the part, or a personal story that relates to the themes of the movie that could be used to get you a little bit of press during the festival. But you really want to save the bulk of what you do for publicity-wise for when the movie comes out.
That's great, thank you. And Meg, if you've cast that same role and you think it's just really going to knock out, do you give do you talk to a publicist beforehand, or you talk to somebody about, hey, you should really look at this character, this person who's playing this role is doing such a great job? Would that be something that a casting director would do?
We've not done that. We don't generally work with publicists. Sometimes we meet them at the parties, at the festivals, but.
Or by the bear.
So, yes, or by the bear. Exactly. So that's not necessarily a step that we're going to get involved in.
And in this kind of film, because I'm sure there are a lot of actors here that want to know this, how, when they get cast in this kind of film, what is the thing you're looking for in an independent that would be different from, say, a television show, going out for a show, going out for a series, or going out for a feature, a high-budget feature? Is there a different quality? What are you looking for?
I don't think there's a different quality based on the budget level of the movie. I think there's a different quality based on what the tone of the movie is, what the story of the movie is, and what the other cast members that are already, like if you already have your leads, your famous people, they're creating sort of a patchwork of a quilt, and you want to make sure the actors that you hire to support them fit into that same quilt. So I think that's appropriate, whether your budget's $120 million or $200,000. You're still looking for actors who feel like they all belong in the same movie.
Good.
And I'll add something to that real quick. I mean, we, the personal publicist and the film publicist work together very closely, and a lot of times if we spot someone that we really think is like, this person's gonna break, we will facilitate introductions to personal publicists, like while we're on the ground and kind of all working together at Sundance. And probably the best example I've ever had, I had my own company for about 3 years, and someone pulled me aside at Sundance in 2003 and was like, you have to meet Peter Dinklage. And he had just had the station agent at Sundance, and I stalked that poor guy, and I signed him, and you know, I was his publicist for about 5 years, and it was one of those things where it was just because someone pulled me aside and said, I know you're looking for clients, this is someone you got to keep your eye on.
Wow, that's great. And Peter, when you're on the other side as a filmmaker, because we have filmmakers involved here too tonight, what are you looking for? And like, do you go see small films? Do you only go see what you're told to see, or what the buzz is? Is there any time you'll just see a smaller film that maybe didn't make it on your list, and why would you sign somebody, a filmmaker?
Well, this business is, you know, it's a taste-driven business, and you know, for us, like, you know, we're always looking for new voices, new unique voices that we respond to, and each agent, each agency is different. So, you know, oftentimes what I say to directors, writers, or actors, even, like, you got to sort of do your research and like see what taste that specific agent has. You know, I'm probably not the guy that you send, like, you know, if you're a rom-com writer, probably not me. You know, I get forced to go to them, you know, but I'd rather like watch like an action movie or like a elevated sci-fi movie, because that's my taste, right? So it just depends. And for us, like, for example, like with Sundance or these big festivals, you may not know this, but oftentimes we've already seen a lot of the films, or get to consider a lot of the films. So part of our duty internally is to sort of divide and conquer and like really cast the right people to cover the right projects. And you know, it's a case-by-case basis. Once somebody responds to something, more people take a look at it, and we sort of develop a team-oriented scenario where we try to assign that specific person as a team.
Yeah, please, Sheldon.
But I actually have to say something that's really important to, and there's different circumstances, but I will say, I'll pass this on to any filmmaker in the room. It's super, super important that, let's say you get into a major festival, or you get into any festival, but when it comes to your Sundances and places like that, a lot of people are going to be saying, show your movie to such and such before the festival. And I advise you to not do that. I advise that the first time anybody sees your movie is at Sundance in that theater. Because this town, as much as someone says, oh no, I won't say anything, or I won't show it, you know, and you'll get certain pressure to show your film ahead of it when it's not even a film yet. You're not properly mixed, you know, it's a different type of cut, and you know that you only have that one chance to make an impression, that first impression.
No, that's great. All right, Megan, for you. So let's talk about how an actor, say, would approach you at a festival. They see your film, they know you're an up-and-comer, we all know that about you. What would be a way somebody would approach you that would make them interesting to them, Because this is the thing about festivals, is that we have all of our creative cirque pond in the same place, actors, agents, publicists, like this panel. But how do you get everybody together? And why would an actor talk to you? I mean, how would that be useful to them? How would it be useful to you?
Those kind of situations when you're at festivals and other places where you're sort of like meeting people in sort of a transactional way are really uncomfortable to me. And I
No,
don't
that's-
personally like to go up to people and who I admire and or who I want a job from and just kind of like coldly introduce myself and be like, let's work together. You know, it's just something I personally don't do it, and I feel like it's not exactly the best way to get work. For someone to just walk up to me and just
Good.
tell,
Can you
like,
expand?
put
I want to
me-
hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there is a level of when you get into situations where somebody can gain something from the other person or vice versa. It's just that situation is rarely, like, you're not meeting on common ground. And I think if you're, as a director, I want people to see my work and want to work with me. And as an actor, I think you should be able to, like, stand on your work. And not your networking skills. And I think that for me, when I've cast entire movies based on like seeing someone in something and just saying I want to work with that person. And it's really hard to stand out when you're coming up to someone at a festival when they're meeting 1,000 people and they're getting 1,000 cards and those cards are going in their back pocket and then going in the garbage.
So, Sheldon, what was it like when you were at Sundance with Love and you had these very high-profile actors in your film and you were an up-and-comer? Did you like the fact that they got more attention than you? Did they help you get more attention? Was it the publicist and your agent that helped you stand out? Oh, don't talk to Dennis Haysbert. Here's who you really want to talk to. I mean, what was that like?
Well, I mean, this is a credit to MPRM and ICM. I mean, they did a really great job of publicizing the film and really pushing the film. But I got to be honest with you, actually, there is a certain level of untruth in that statement. Because to be honest with you, at Sundance, the director is the rock star. That festival is about the filmmakers. And so, you know, I literally even had a situation where someone had said to me after my premiere, it was like, man, it was great, you know, I just wish that, you know, that you'd have given, you know, Danny Glover more of an opportunity to say something or Dennis Haysbert to say something. And I was like, well, if you only knew the hell I went through to make the film. But at that moment, it really celebrates the filmmakers. But in saying that too, as she said earlier about you know, Common is a very, very famous, accomplished person. But what happens at Sundance is that because they're publicizing the film as a whole, I'm a part of that package. And, you know, so you ride that wave.
No, that's great, thanks. So what's it like going to smaller festivals? Is it worth it for you guys to go to smaller festivals? If so, which ones have, besides the Olympia Film Festival? That's Olympia, Washington, so you all know.
Abby's
The
from
capital.
Seattle too, you guys.
Yeah, we have that, that's a weird theme up here. We didn't do that on purpose.
I'm
I
going
promise.
next week.
Yeah, good. But really, going to a smaller festival, tell me about some of your experiences there, how different it is from one of the majors, and how you sell your film, how you sell yourself there, how you sell your product or your film.
I just went to the Citizen Jane Festival in Columbia, Missouri, which is a female filmmaker festival. I hadn't been, but my friend Mel Eslin, who produced The One I Love, went last year and came back and was like, you have to go. If you can go to that festival, you have to go. It's great. And it was such a good experience because I'm, you know, sort of really at the end of the festival circuit with Lucky Them. I mean, it's available everywhere at this point, and you can't, it's like, you know, you could buy it on iTunes or go see it at this film festival, you know, but so there's no pressure on me to like be selling the movie or anything like that. And really I just went and sort of met other female filmmakers, which is always great, and then saw their work and I got to see such a wide, diverse array of voices that I hadn't caught at other festivals. And it was, like, I felt like I left there knowing about a bunch of people who are doing great things that I didn't know about before, and that was pretty awesome.
Peter, would you be going to smaller festivals in what you do?
Oftentimes, no, but if it's like the exotic place, I'll go.
The Caribbean?
Exactly.
I'm like no, like for the most part, like there are major festivals where we find a lot of business out of, and oftentimes the major agencies tend to just focus on the major ones. And if you wanted to, you could be gone every day of the year at the Winchestertonville Film Festival, right? Yeah. What town is, what movie is that in? Question mark, right? So, my life is very cyclical, and I'll tell you right now. So in January, I'm in Utah, and it's very warm. In February, it's Berlin. In March, it's South by Southwest. In April, it's Tribeca. In May, it's Cannes, where it's so cheap.
Talk about being poor.
then back in the summer, we stay around here for the LA Film Festival. And then in September, we're in the fall festival circuit. So depending on how much I want to travel, we do Telluride, Venice, and Toronto. And then October, we get to hang out for Halloween.
New York Film Festival.
New York Film Festival, that's where I went for Halloween, And then November, December, we're pretty much here just getting, our slates ready.
Getting ready for Sundance.
So I'm not kidding. That has been my life for the last 7 years, 8 years. So I have a lot of air miles.
Have you been to any of the smaller ones?
I have, and so I'll go to smaller ones things like the Palm Springs Short Fest. Mm-hmm. I go to that all the time just because I think shorts are such a great medium to portray talent, whether you're a filmmaker, whether you're a writer, whether you're the actors in it. And so, for example, what's an example of it? So have all you guys seen Curfew? It won the Oscar, not this last one, but the year before. It was a short that won the Oscar. So I saw it well before it was going through that route. And the filmmakers at the time had developed a feature script on it. And I knew what we had there. So it was all about strategy and how to get the feature film made. So the feature film is actually going to come out later this year, but it won it was called Before I Disappear. That was based on the short Curfew. It was bought by IFC. It's going to come out later this month. But so I go to small ones like that. Just one is to just watch shorts to see if I can find new voices or new relationships that later down the road I can work with. So
That's great. That's inspiring. I'm sure everybody's very happy to hear that.
I was going to say, I think from a domestic publicity perspective, where we see the national attention on festivals is Sundance, South by, and Toronto are kind of the big three. You don't see as much kind of domestic publicity come out of Berlin or Venice. And even South by can be a challenge just because the national press has come off of Sundance and they cover Toronto. But it's a real difference with those little festivals because there's some of them that are fantastic. Like I love Seattle, I love Philly, and they're great for regional press and doing things in those markets. But it's really hard to kind of get the national attention sometimes at those.
And just my personal experience as a filmmaker in terms of being at festivals, Savannah was an amazing film festival for me. Savannah, Georgia was I couldn't believe how great that festival was. Every screening was packed. They treated filmmakers and actors and writers, and that was a wonderful experience. Nashville was awesome. Maryland Film Festival was a great festival. And I think that outside of the big things, the big ones and all of that, I think it's just a way that you really can get your voice out, and whether you're a writer, director, or actor, and then also too, you can, if you're an actor, all these other filmmakers and producers and people are seeing these movies at these festivals, so you're literally just, you're getting your next job, because then somebody sees you in this little small, movie, and it's like, oh, remember that guy. So.
Yeah. That's really important because I think a lot of us, a lot of actors and filmmakers in the crowd work at smaller festivals and want to know what the value of that is. And I think just getting to know other people and being passionate
And
get-
having a less jaded audience see your movie. I mean, that's the thing is like, I mean, Toronto's pretty audience friendly, but Sundance is a rough room. You know, so to be able to go to a town where people are at a film festival because they have a genuine like passion, they've bought a badge so that they can go out every day and see 4 or 5 movies is really fantastic.
Oh, Dallas was great too. Dallas.
Great. Meg, I've got a question for you about casting shorts.
Okay,
Do you do them?
I do.
You do. Okay,
I
tell us about how a filmmaker would get you to cast their short film. What would make you cast it?
Well, it starts with the script. So pretty much any filmmaker who is interested in working with me and my company, they need to get me a script. And if Sunny and I read the script and feel like it's a good fit for us, it's something that we can get passionate about and work to sell, really, because part of our job at that point is selling the material to agents or actors, et cetera, then we'll sign on and cast the short. And the casting process is the same, whether you're doing a short or a full-length feature or a studio film or an indie film, or the casting process is the same.
Right, that's great, and that's valuable. It's valuable to know that everybody, the casting person, a reputable casting person, is taking that audition as seriously as anything else. I think that we always have to remind ourselves of that. You know, that it's always an opportunity to be before somebody that can hire you, that will use you. So it's good to know. So any other festival bits, any others, just bits of advice you can give people, like double layers of socks, or make sure you drink a lot of coffee, or just good practice?
My boss has a saying, take your humble pill and your humor pill every morning, because you're gonna, you know, it's gonna be a rough ride sometimes, and you just gotta have a sense of humor about it. I mean, a lot of what we do is logistics, so it's hair and makeup and cars and moving actor from point A to point B, who, you know, it kind of gets into a lot of that as part of, you know, while we're trying to do the publicity. And so it's just reminding everyone, like, be humble, be thankful you're in the festival, be gracious to every volunteer you meet, because they will remember that. And, you know, and just kind of remember you're being watched while you're there. Like, people want to come out and tell a really great story about this fantastic filmmaker they met who was, you know, great, and how much they loved his movie and the passion. And so, you know, just kind of have a sense of humor, but be humble as well.
Yeah. And I would say too about it's in terms of like approaching people at, like, let's say Sundance, you know, in my experience, it's like, it's actually a great energy in Park City, and anybody is approachable. But it's all in how you approach, and it's just one of those things where I just feel like you know, just know that, like, it's all about nurturing a relationship over a period of time. But know that everybody is approachable, because you're up on that crazy mountain, it's snowing, everybody, you know, people on the trams, and it's just that whole situation that you just never know who you're going to nurture a relationship with. And even you making the investment of being a young actor who nobody knows your name, nobody knows anything about you, but taking it upon yourself of just going up to Sundance, experiencing that, meeting people, and you just never know what comes out of that, as opposed to just, you know, being here and seeing what that is so far away.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, piggyback on that, as far as, like, if you're an actor or a filmmaker and you're at Sundance and you don't have a project there, or if you do and you're a small piece of that project, and you end up on the tram or at a party or in a crowded restaurant sharing a table with someone you don't know, I think this also applies to networking here. What's important is that you're an interesting person. It's not about you going up and telling Sheldon, oh, I saw you at this panel, and these are the 5 things I've just done as an actor. Or this is the short I just shot. It's about saying, you know, I saw this film, or you both just standing outside the lobby after a screening, and you talk about the film itself, or you talk about, and that conversation can roll into something that you do personally. I climb mountains, I'm into CrossFit, or I just took this trip to Bali, or whatever. If you're an interesting person and can have a normal conversation, that leaves a much stronger opinion or impression on the person that you're talking to. And that starts building an authentic relationship, which is what you want.
Right, and it takes the transactional thing out of it.
Yes.
So, yeah, and I was just going to add, too, that for filmmakers who go to film festivals, it's very easy to get very caught up in your own world, in your own film, and be just, like, focused on your own thing and not go see anything else. And I think it's really important to see as many of the other movies that are playing as possible, not just to know like what's the competition, but like to look for, you know, other talent that you might be able to work with that are actors or cinematographers, or, you know, you can sort of know what's happening and who's working right now, and that's the best place to see it.
Yeah, and they say the Sundance experience is the movies you'll see and the people you meet, and it's so true. You know, it's so true.
No, that's really great. That's all really great information. And on that, can you, without naming names, give us an experience or somebody you've seen or something that a person that did something that maybe was just off the inappropriate, or something that you just something you've seen at a festival? Just
Well, I'll
wondering.
start.
Just one. That
I'll
might be a
start.
good story. I just want a good story.
I once was at a party and got approached by an actor, which was totally fine, and we started out having a casual conversation. And the next thing I knew, from his blazer pocket came a stack of photos this big, I'm not joking, like 2 inches, of pictures of him in all the different extra roles that he'd played. And unfortunately, I
were a
had
couple
no
naked
way
ones.
to gracefully exit this conversation. What'd you say?
There were a couple naked ones.
Thankfully, no. Then I wouldn't have worried about gracefully exiting the conversation. I just would have walked off. But I did see all of those photos before I was able to thank him and find someone else to speak to. But yes,
That's a good
that
one.
was
That's good.
I
I
think
mean-
an appropriate way to approach me.
You know, I'll pass this on, and it's actually a secret, but I don't mind sharing it because I am a caring, generous person.
Oh, good.
No, but and you're absolutely right. So the main difference between like the crazy person that approaches you that you immediately shut down because you're freaked out, but the way to approach anyone in this town is with specificity, and like. You know, when you approach someone, you say, "Oh, you're so wonderful," then they're like, "Thank you." Well, 1,000,000 people say that to them. But, I mean, I'm telling you, if you walked up to Tom Cruise and you said to him, in that one scene in Collateral, you gave Jamie Foxx this look, what was happening? He's going to be like, "Oh, my God," like, you have him. You know what I mean? Or you'd have to be a completely mean person not to address you. So I think it's really important. And nowadays, you can cheat because you got a smartphone. So if you see her at a party, before you approach her, go over in the corner and be like, okay, let's see what
IMDb,
what
IMDb.
movie, yeah, IMDb, okay. Hey, so that movie that you did, and then she's going to engage you. So that's specificity.
I think it's remembering that the festivals are, no matter how big the festival, they never have enough staff. These are people who, for the 2 or 3 months before the festival especially, work 24 hours a day. I mean, they get little sleep. And they are the backbone of the festival in terms of logistics is often run by volunteers. We had an instance at Toronto a couple years ago where we had a movie called Little White Lies, which was Guillaume Canet, directed with Marion Cotillard. And we had a screening, a big gala screening, and the subtitles on the DCP didn't work. So the audience sat for an hour while they were trying to figure it out. They couldn't get it figured out, so they basically made the announcement of, okay, the movie's in French, good thing we're in Canada. Whoever speaks French can stay. We're going to move a screening, you know, with subtitles over to another venue, come over there. And, you know, got over there, found out they had kicked 127 hours press screening out of the theater to make room for us, so the 127 hours, people were furious. And, you know, but it's moving parts, and just always remembering, like, they're trying to make everything work as smoothly as possible, and that doesn't always happen. And, you know, and we were great, like Marion and Guillaume, I mean, everybody kind of, you know, it was unfortunate, but everybody kept their cool, and we had our screening, and it all went well, but it took us 3.5 hours to get there.
Wow.
You know, so just remembering that stuff happens and be patient.
No, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, being polite and kind to people is just a good rule of thumb because, I mean, you know, the golden rule, but also anyone you meet could later be in a position where they can make or break something for you. And I know I remember everyone who was a dick to me. And they're, you know, and I will avoid them, you know.
No.
My husband has a great story about he's a screenwriter, about going into a pitch meeting, and he kept looking at the guy going, I know you, and then figuring out they'd all been in a hot tub at Sundance in their underwear together. So, you know, you just never know.
No, I don't know if that would that help you or not help you? That's the question.
I think he got the job. I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay. Peter, did you want to add something? Okay. Okay.
Hot tub underwear stories, Peter?
No comment.
Got it. So before we get to questions, I just want to remind you all to go, if you haven't, on the SAG-Indie website. We're all signed up for SAG-Indie. And Darian Gibson is here. And I know we've got her on camera, but she's fantastic. She's the executive director of SAG-Indie. So that means that there's help for you, for contracts, for actors with SAG-AFTRA, with your contracts, knowing what to do. If you have questions, if you're a filmmaker, about how to get an actor, it's a great resource. And as actors, it's a great place. You're always welcome to show up if you're at a film festival, at a SAG-AFTRA or SAG-Indie event. And if you feel lost, that's a good place to go. So please remember to do that, because SAG-Indie's everywhere, and Darian would love to see you. Okay, so here we go. So this is from Nancy, for anyone, and this is a great question. How important is social media for you in regard to seeing some actress or actor through casting, having a film, or taking on as a client, especially if they have many followers on social media? I think this is a very a question that's often asked now. Anybody?
I feel like that's definitely that.
Okay, I'll start with casting. I will say that in the independent market, a lot of filmmakers, not as many directors, but a lot of producers are wanting to know what people's social networking capabilities are, what their followers are on Twitter, are they on YouTube consistently, things like that. It's personally not my favorite thing to consider when casting. I would prefer to never have to think about that. Just because I don't think just because you have a Twitter following means that you are the right person for that role, and I don't love the idea that that could push a filmmaker over the edge of choosing someone. But the reality is that it's very hard to sell and market and make money off of independent films these days. And so you have to think outside the box and consider all the aspects of how you're going to sell your film down the road. And YouTube sensations and people with huge Twitter followings are helpful. So it is a factor. Do I think everybody should go out and focus all of their free time on making themselves a YouTube sensation? No. But it is a factor for some people.
Okay, good.
I think from a publicity perspective, it's something, what we're trying to do is kind of build a social media profile for the film during the festival. And if we do have actors who have a following, they can help us do that. Like if we put out a clip, they can tweet it to their followers. But it's by no means are we going like, oh, we have to have this person because they have this huge social. It's more about if they bring that to the table, how can we utilize it? And making sure they also know what the rules are about what, a lot of times we will have people who will say something they shouldn't on social media. Before a review breaks, they might find out something, or a movie will sell and someone's told them and they tweet it before we've announced it to the trades, or so I mean those are extreme circumstances, but I think it's just about also being aware of what you can and can't do in the festival environment.
This sort of answers that question, but I think it's really important. But that's actually a major part of the future of independent film is going to be social media, because at the end of the day, the money is dwindling in terms of what someone's going to pay to acquire you for your film, but you can empower yourself to then therefore create this movement in different markets to take the film to all through social media. So you're literally going to be your own booker and your own person that's moving around with the film based off of Twitter and Instagram. Yeah.
Peter, can you go off of that too? I mean, if you're packaging a film and selling it, are you looking to the internet? Are you looking to other markets?
It's strategy. So, it's based, and it's an inexact science, and it's case by case based on the film. So, I work with clients that have several million Twitter followers, and or Instagram, and they'll take a picture and then tag me. I'm like, whoa, don't tag me, because whoa, it's crazy how viral it gets, right? And I'm like, whoa, right? But then when it comes to, I'm like, hey, actually, we have all these offers and stuff. Let's create some buzz and some competitiveness. It's all doing it at the right moment at the right time too. So,
Okay.
and it depends. But I don't I was going back and just listening to we were saying earlier, I don't think just because it's like, okay, there's two actors, actor A, actor B. This one has 2 more Twitter followers. Let's cast them. You know, it doesn't happen like that, right? And at the end of the day, like if it does happen like that, I'm like, oh, please, because I'm like, wow, because I chose to work in entertainment because I believe in like creativity, something I don't possess. That's why like I'm an agent, right? But you know, I like to think I possess a little bit of it, you know. But I just know my strong suits are like negotiating, like figuring out like how to get the script to a level where I think it's like more commercial. But for me, like I couldn't like sit on my computer and like type a 120-page like screenplay. It's amazing, and it's such amazing art. So, and if all of a sudden social media starts doing that to the business, I'm gonna be like really sad. But it's a great way to market things. So.
If you can use your festival to launch the project social media, I think that's a really good idea, because what we're seeing on the indie side is it takes so much to build a social media following that if you get bought by a certain studio, there are certain studios that actually don't do individual campaigns on social for their movies anymore because it's not cost efficient. So they run an overall like studio social media campaign, and then your film becomes a hashtag within their social. But if you can walk in the door and say, we launched this right away and we've already got this many followers, you might have a better shot at kind of having a more grassroots social presence when the movie comes out.
Yeah, but I'd actually start before the festival, though. I mean, I wouldn't go crazy, but I'd really start to build some type of awareness. So you're, yeah.
But you don't want to overhype. Like
Exactly.
it's
You don't wanna
exactly
overhype.
like it
Exactly.
depends on what the strategy is, what the team that's behind the movie.
And that's why you have a team. That's why you have professionals to help you, hopefully one day. But this is great if you're doing it, when you start out, it's just you. And actually, going to that, this is from Greg. What would be 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you would give a first-time filmmaker with aspirations of eventually submitting to a festival? So when do you know that it's time to submit your film, and where? Megan, do you take this?
I think it's time to submit your film when it's completely done. Whenever possible, if you can avoid sending a rough cut. Every festival programmer will tell you that they know how to watch a rough cut, but if you're not a proven entity, then nobody can anticipate how you're going to finish a movie. No one can know how much of a perfectionist you're going to be and how detail-oriented you're going to be and how polished the final thing will be. And I honestly believe that my film, The Off Hours, wouldn't have gotten into Sundance if I'd sent a rough cut, because they didn't know who I was. They had no idea how that movie would end. I sent a color-corrected, mixed, complete movie to them, and so they didn't have to use any imagination at all. So, there's a lot of people who rush, and and I get it. Like, I've sent rough cuts to festivals, but I've never really, I've never had good results from that. Lucky Them was the first time I got into a festival with a rough cut, and that's like, I've done a couple movies, and so then it's like there's an awareness of the fact that I'm going to follow through. But yeah, if you're a first-time filmmaker, I don't think you should try avoid that.
Yeah, and definitely don't be in a hurry about it. I'm a firm believer in it's like it happens when it's supposed to. And I'm real big on like hear 1,000 no's for 1 yes. So get your no count up. Know what it's like for Sundance to say no to you, and then just keep fighting. And really, at the end of the day, what's super important is defining your voice. Like Sundance and those festivals are all about filmmakers with a voice. And at the end of the day, what you created, is there a voice there? Are you saying something? And when you go to Sundance enough, it's literally like you see the blueprint of what the movies are. And there's quote unquote indie movies, but it's got like Kristen Stewart in it, but she's like on an army base. And then there's like there's movies like mine that it's about a kid who's gone through something in the urban nature of the environment of America. Is usually a priest touching somebody. Anyway, I'm gonna stop.
I think the important thing to remember is let your film dictate your deadlines. Don't let your deadlines dictate your film.
Good.
Because we had a movie that we worked on this last year called Blue Ruin, which I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, but it's really fantastic genre revenge movie, and I love it. And they submitted to Sundance and got turned down. And it was, Sundance actually said to them, you won't be ready. Like, we see the film that's here, but you won't be ready by January. And then they got into Cannes, and then they got into Toronto, and then they got into AFI, and the great coup was the next year Sundance asked them back. Wow. And so we know you've played all these other festivals, but you took our advice, you got it to where it needed to be, and we want to be able to showcase and celebrate the film.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And this is for Sheldon from Jamila. As a filmmaker, if you want your film, you want to pass the film festivals and go just to the major stream, what is your advice? I think that's interesting. I mean, for filmmakers, these days it's such a done deal that you go to the festival circuit, but how do you not go to if you've got an independent film and you don't want to do festivals, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are several successful things with that. I mean, at the end of the day, we put so much on like Sundance and don't get me wrong, like I'm truly thankful. Like it literally gave me a career, and I'm so thankful for that. But nowadays, it's like it's still trying to figure itself out of what it's gonna be. But something special is really gonna happen to where, yeah, when it used to be, you had to have Sundance, South by Southwest, Tribeca, Toronto, these places. There's gonna come a moment when, people are gonna be seeing your movies without those places. I don't know exactly what that is. I couldn't tell you. But one thing I can say is, once again, I come back to developing your voice and building a following. And it's all right there on your iPhone. So, yeah.
This is from Michelle, and this is an interesting question, too. She did an AFI short and won some awards in AFI short. So how long can you ride the wave of when you get noticed? That's a great question. Do you put it on your resume? Do you email people? How do you get the publicity out when it's just you, but you've been recognized?
Yeah, I think it's, you use it as long as you can. I mean, I think there is sometimes a deadline in terms of your short's gone to festivals, you've won some awards, and if something hasn't gotten made after a certain period of time, it can get a little tricky. But I do think putting it out in front of people, I mean, I will say that shorts are one of the hardest things in the world to get press on. Unless you are going to a shorts festival where there is kind of some overall coverage for the short, or there's a couple of things that the Wrap just did a short film series, and then there's a great competition out of Shreveport that's the Louisiana Film Prize, where they actually give a $50,000 prize to a winning short filmmaker. So there's some things like that that I think help give you some momentum. And then you have to figure out what you're using the short for. Is it a calling card? Is it something that can become a web series, a standalone web piece? And sometimes people will slide their shorts in that way and maybe find a presence for them online.
But as an actor who's just cast in this,
right,
what can they do to? Is it useful?
It is, I think, more in terms of casting and letting people see your work. To be honest, from a publicity perspective, it's really, really hard. I mean, we went to Sundance with a short film, it's been 8 or 9 years ago, that Joshua Leonard directed, who has been in Hump Day and Blair Witch Projects and a lot of stuff, and it was great known cast, all that, and at Sundance in particular, couldn't get them arrested, because everyone is so focused on the 200 feature-length films that are playing. And so I think when shorts, it becomes about grassroots, social networking, getting it in people's hands. I think that there was a short at Sundance last year called The Cub that played before a movie we worked on called Hell Baby. And I must have seen that short 9 times because I watched it and I laughed every time. But that filmmaker was in the lobby handing out copies on DVD to people as they were coming out of the screening. So there's ways to kind of use it as a tool.
And that's a good thing to do.
He got his first feature made, and it's playing at AFI right now, and so I think it worked for him.
Great. And so I've got a question for Sheldon and Megan. Can you talk about the importance of meeting other filmmakers at festivals and building those relationships?
I mean, I think I'm a huge proponent of doing that, and I have I'll give an example. A filmmaker friend of mine, Colin Trevorrow, who made Safety Not Guaranteed, introduced me to the person who wrote Lucky Them, and I don't think I would have gotten that job if I didn't have a relationship with him, and because he recommended me. His word was valuable to the producer. I had never done any comedy before. The fact that they hired me to do this is kind of like kudos to them for trusting me with it. But it wouldn't have happened if I didn't have that. And so it's like those kind of relationships that you build, it's not like you're competing with these people necessarily. It's like not everybody's going to want to do every job. And sometimes I read stuff all the time where I'm like, oh, the perfect director for this would be this guy who directed Bellflower or whatever. And where it's like, it's totally not for me, but sometimes I'll say that to my agent or whatever. I'm just like, you should see if you can connect the dots. But yeah, because I think you can be advocates for other filmmakers and they can be advocates for you.
Yeah, and it's actually a really important thing because I'll never forget I had seen before I made my film. I'd seen this movie, Medicine for Melancholy, and I seen this great actress, Tracy Higgins, in it, and I was like, man, I want to put her in a movie one day, and she was in love. I mean, and she was really good. She didn't even have any lines in the film, but that was because I had a relationship with the filmmaker, Barry Jenkins, and so I could call him when I was ready to make the film and be like, hey, Barry, I really want to get in touch with Tracy. So that's also very helpful, too, because
Absolutely.
You can get to actors where people like Peter can block you. No, Peter would never block you. But seriously, when the gatekeepers are there, filmmakers are literally your wise men helping you get to them. So super important.
So I think it's important, too. It's to remember to be generous. Be generous with each other. I think these days we're in such competition with each other all the time as actors and filmmakers, and we think that we just have to put our blinders on, but I think we have to remember to be generous, and I think that really helps.
Karma is real.
Karma's real. All right. This is a good one, too. This is actually something I was going to ask. This is from Laura. What is the best way to get a name cast for your next feature or current web series that has, for whatever reason? But how do you get a high pro talent to do your film? And I want to start with Meg.
Okay. I'm going to go back to that it all starts with a script.
Okay.
And your script has to be fantastic. And more than just you have to think that. It's awesome when filmmakers are passionate about what they're doing, but it's also nice when a few other people that have read it and get excited about it, etc. It comes down to the script, because that's the tool that anybody approaching an actor is using more than anything else, is the script. So if I'm working on something and I have a script and the director is unknown and the producers are unknown and I'm going to ICM or anywhere else with this script, I have to be able to tell that agent, trust me, just have to read it. I promise you, this is for your client. They're going to love it, etc. So you start with the script. After that, then you get into who the director is and what their work is like. Because if you're an unknown director or you only have one film under your belt or even a short, and you're going to someone like a Danny Glover or someone like that, they want to know, whose hands am I going to be in? And what have they done, and can I see it? And we did a film called Natural Selection, which was Robbie Pickering's first feature. And Robbie had an award-winning short that not a whole lot of people had seen, and then he had gone through the Film Independent Directors Lab and shot some scenes through that process. And his script was fantastic, but they had a teeny tiny amount of money for it, and he had a phenomenal reel. So we could send this great script and then send this reel where you could see how talented a director he was. And it opened huge doors for him, just those two pieces.
I was just going to add that I think as a director, when I get a script and I usually, get my hands in there on revisions and stuff, before it goes to cast, I like to look at each role and try to think about it as if I were reading it as an actor to play that role, and what's in that role. Is there enough meat there? Is there an arc there? Is it just like just a flat friend role or something like that? Try to make every role something that somebody would want to play, and not be doing you a favor, like they have a desire to come in and fill that out.
Yeah, I think this will be the most important thing I'll say in this entire panel, is people, when I would show the film and people would do Q&As, it's amazing how people would just go straight to, how did you get all those actors? No one cares about me as a director. They overlook everything. No, how did you get those actors? And the answer is very simple. You write something that somebody wants. And by writing something that somebody wants, it then therefore gives you an opportunity. But that still only, as a writer-director, only gets you halfway. The next thing, as she just said, is that, then they're going to be like, okay, so you wrote a really wonderful script, but who are you as a director? And so then what will happen is you'll get a lot of people who will then try to take your script from you and go give it to another director, someone who's accomplished. And so then what you have to do is you have to make it as hard as possible for them to say no to you. So then what I did, and I'm so thankful for Film Independent, is I went through all the Film Independent programs. I went through every single program, and I hadn't made a short film since film school. And so what was happening is that people were saying that they love the script around town, but we're not so sure about him as a first-time director. Well, they're always going to say that. So then you have to empower yourself to go make a short film that just makes it just a little bit harder for them to be like, okay, well, he can direct. And I think that's so important.
Peter, sorry, I want to ask Peter this question. Would you take a script that's a really good script from a not known filmmaker and push it to a high-profile talent? When would you do that, and
Well,
when would you not?
unfortunately, major agencies have unsolicited script policies. So, it's a business of relationships. So oftentimes when we're looking at things, it's because it's a festival I look at festivals, for example, as a filter mechanism, right? So I know that specific festival, I've seen 3,000 movies, right? And after the 3,000, they accepted 155. That's a pretty impressive, list. So, in the same way, when it comes to material, we look at things that, people that I trust, and I trust their taste. And there are some people that this thing's the best thing on, since sliced bread. And I look at it, and it's the worst script I've ever read in my life, right? I'm not going to take the next script that person says to me, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt because, it could be in a foreign language. So I'm like, dude, I don't even read, this language, right? But in a lot of ways, when I look at material, I'm driven, I read a lot. I read I don't know, anywhere from 10 to 20 scripts a week. So, and I actually really enjoy reading. So, and oftentimes a lot of those scripts, they come internally because a major agency, part of what I do is servicing our clients from within. But I've been in the business long enough to have great relationships outside of the building, and from movies that we've put together where they might not even be a certain piece of talent that is right in our agency. We've always tried, and we go outside, just because at the end of the day I want to make the best movie possible, right? And get accolades for that film team and along with us, even though we're sort of anonymous, right? But that's that. I mean,
Great, thanks.
And I was just going to say, and Sheldon touched on it, labs, workshops, because I think that's where you have a chance, especially with Sundance Labs and Film Independent, they bring actors in to workshop the movie. And I have a couple of filmmakers I know who have found their actor for their role because the actor workshopped it. And so I think anytime you can get an opportunity like that, go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to say this just really quickly. But for me, most importantly, is finding your champions in this industry. And so what I find so interesting is, and listen, don't worry about no. I'm telling you, keep hearing no. Just get used to hearing it. And the more no's you hear, it means you're getting closer to it. I'll never forget, there was a manager who first passed on love for Common. Just said, just downright no. And then we got a champion at WME who the producer stayed on him because he had that relationship with him. Mike, you got to read it. Just please read it. He stayed on him for 6 months. And the guy finally read it on a Saturday morning in his house. And he was literally flipping out in his apartment that it was the best script he had read in a long time. Here's the best part of the story and the reason why I'm telling this. his then girlfriend comes out and is like, what's going on with you? Like he was like, I just read a great script. And she's like, well, what's it about? He's like, well, it's about an uncle and a nephew in a car in Baltimore. And the kid finds out that his uncle is a really bad person. She goes, wait a minute, is it called love? He goes, yeah. She goes, oh, I passed on that months ago. So what I'm saying is that, do you see that in the same household? One person thinks it's brilliant. The other person is like, oh, yeah, so whatever.
That's great. Meg, you were going to...
Well, I was just going to say, in getting these name actors to do your movies, relationships mean a lot, whether it's a producer or casting director that can get you in the door. The other thing is being smart about the cast that you're going to. Like, not going to Will Smith for love, but going to Common.
Yeah.
Like, that's a smart move because, A, you did have things you could see where you could trust his talent, but he hadn't done what you were asking him to do. And so, as a filmmaker and a visionary, you trusted your instincts on that and thought slightly outside the box. And I think that's really important, is don't go to the obvious choice. Don't go to the A-list person who always plays those roles.
Yeah.
But think slightly to the left or right of that, to somebody who might want to be doing those roles, but nobody's offered it to him yet.
Great. No, that's really wonderful advice. I think we're going to wrap up soon. I hope this was valuable for you. I want to make sure, I want to make sure that the foundation really, it's so valuable in SAG-Indie, and that we give you really valuable things to use in your careers, and you know, share it, like we said, open up and share. And so, wrapping up, is there one last piece of advice for a festival? What's the most fun thing you can do at a festival? How you just relax and have fun?
I would like to someday see a movie I'm not working on at a festival.
Great.
It's a goal. I never get there, but I would like to do that someday.
Anybody else? Any last words of advice, festival advice, before we wrap up?
Always drink any water you can.
Okay, good.
Stay hydrated.
Good.
Go and I'll say this because I know Darian well and we love SAG-Indie, but if there is a SAG-Indie event at the festival you're at, go. There are fantastic events, and in terms of places where you can network in a group where you're kind of all acting peers, like they're really fantastic events to go to.
Great.
Bring extra phone battery.
Good.
I was just going to reiterate the thing about, you know, trying to build actual relationships and not just like hand your card out to as many people as you can.
Yeah,
That's good. That's good advice.
If you have a rather large family, it is probably best that your mother doesn't invite every last single one of them. Because for the filmmaker, it will be a nightmare. You just, yeah.
You also have to remember the festival only gives you so many tickets.
Exactly. And so then all of a sudden you become the bad guy and you're like, I have I'm sorry, but you're the director. What are you talking about? You have no idea. I'm so sorry. We have 100 people here. I only have 25 tickets.
So thank you all. Thank you all, panel, for doing this. And make sure to fill out your comment cards. And if you'd like to see this again, let us know, and we'll do it again. So thank you all so much for coming out tonight.